Hello everyone, I am Angelo Tindugan, student from the College of Criminal Justice at the Universidad de Manila, and I am here to discuss about the methods of identification other than fingerprinting. As we all know, criminologists uses different types of identification in order to distinguish one from the other, and this is one important thing for us to determine who are the suspects for such crimes, the victims, and to give leads to the investigators in accordance to the unlawful act that have happened. These are forensic anthropology, forensic serology, odontology, the DNA fingerprinting, portrait parle, and lastly, the anthropometry. And I am here to help you know more about the aforementioned methods. Forensic anthropology can be described as the analysis of human remains for the medico-legal purpose of establishing identity. It is a special subfield of physical anthropology, in which, as we all know, the study of human remains, that involves applying skeletal analysis and techniques in archaeology and solving criminal cases. When human remains or a suspected burial are found, forensic anthropologists are called upon to gather information from the bones in their recovery context to determine who died, how they died, and how long ago they died. Forensic anthropologists are specialized in analyzing hard tissues such as bones. With their training in archaeology, they are also knowledgeable about excavating buried remains and meticulously recording the evidence. As a forensic anthropologist, they help in establishing and confirming personal identification through skeletal examination. They identify the four basic biological criteria form the basis of any primary identification, which is the skeletal or developmental age, biological sex, build, body modifications, evidence of surgical interventions, including scars and prosthetics, evidence of trauma, and chronic hard and soft tissue diseases that may leave characteristic macroscopic and microscopic lesions on surviving tissue, are additional factors that would be useful in order to confirm the identification of the person. For example, fractures to bones of the face, ribs, and hands that are in various stages of healing may suggest a history of violence in the domestic setting, while the presence of orthopedic implants in the knee may have resulted from sports-related injuries. Once the biological profile of the victim is completed, the next step is the skeletal trauma analysis. It is the determination if damage to bones occurred before, during, or after death. If done correctly, this analysis can reveal what really happened that caused the death to occur. For example, identifying whether a mark was caused by a knife stabbed into the victim at the time of death. Conical depressions and tiny parallel grooves can be interpreted as knife wounds. Inclusion of forensic anthropologists early in an investigation helps to ensure maximum recovery and protection of the human skeletal remains and allows the evidence response team members to focus upon other lines of evidence like the fingerprints and DNA. They serve as a great help in giving the last chance of identification and providing justice, particularly in cases where some bodies are in the stage of decomposing. Forensic serology is the application of the study of blood, semen, saliva and other body fluids to legal matters. It is comprised of the detection of enzymes and antigens, as in the identification of seminal stains or blood and DNA typing. It is the application of immunological and biochemical methods to identify the presence of a body fluid or tissue sample encountered in connection with the investigation of a crime. The serology section of a forensic laboratory may deal with any or all of the following: blood typing, characterization of unknown stains, blood spatter analysis for crime reconstruction, paternity testing, semen identification in sexual assault cases, and DNA typing for identification of victims and suspects. To determine if there is blood present in the scene, investigators uses tests such as the Kastle-Meyer-Leukomalachite green and luminol testing. Once they confirm that blood is present, they should do the precipitin test to know if it is a human blood. If it appears to be a human, then it can now undergo to DNA testing. Forensic characterization of semen. Many crimes involve sexual assault. Forensic investigators may need to search for semen stains at a crime scene. Semens are commonly found on beddings, clothing, towels, carpets, cushions, vehicle seats, etc. Seminal fluid contains water, spermatozoa, enzymes, and inorganic salts. For the forensic characterization of saliva. It is a simple test for saliva involving mixing of starch, iodine, and a sample of the presumed saliva together. Saliva is a mixture of many components, 99% water, mucin, amylase, and buccal cells. Forensic odontology. It is the application of dental science to legal investigations, primarily involving the identification of the offender, by comparing dental records to a bite mark left on the victim or at the scene, or identification of human remains based on dental records. Bite marks have been divided into 7 classifications: hemorrhage, abrasion, contusion, laceration, incision, avulsion, and artifact. Bite marks may be found on the flesh of victims of a violent attack, particularly on the stomach, breasts, or buttocks. Alternatively, they may be found on the suspect, left by the victim during self-defense. The quality and accuracy of a bite mark are dependent on numerous factors, including time-dependent changes, where the bite mark was found, damage to soft tissue, dental similarity among individuals, and quality of photography, impressions, or measurements. A common method of comparing bite marks is to use transparent overlays to record the biting edges of a suspect's teeth and compare them with the crime scene sample. These are often drawn on sheets of acetate, which can then be placed over one another for comparison. If it is possible, a dental cast will be made of the bite mark for later comparison to a suspect sample. DNA fingerprinting. Also known as DNA typing, DNA profiling, genetic fingerprinting, genotyping, or identity testing. It is a method of isolating and identifying variable elements within the base pair sequence of DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid. In DNA fingerprinting, fragments of DNA are separated on a gel using a technique called electrophoresis. This creates a pattern that can be analyzed and that is unique to each individual, with the exception of identical twins. In 1990, the FBI created a national DNA databank known as CODIS. This extremely valuable database contains the DNA fingerprints of convicted sex offenders and violent criminals, as well as DNA profiles from evidence taken from crime scenes. It helped bring thousands of criminals to justice. To take these fingerprints, the FBI uses a standard panel of 13 microsatellites, which together yield a remarkably minuscule 1 in 575 trillion chance of a random match. In paternity testing, the DNA fingerprints of the child, the mother, and the father are compared. Paternity is determined by assessing whether it would be possible for the child to have inherited the combination of bents in their DNA fingerprint from the alleged father and mother. With DNA fingerprinting, investigators have been able to re-examine evidence from old cases, leading to the arrests of violent killers and rapists who would have otherwise gone free. Portrait parle, meaning speaking likeness, is a system for verbal description of physical characteristics of the subject. It is based on the Berdillon method of criminal identification by measurements of the human body. Berdillon designed an incremental physical description card, also called the Berdillon card, comprising of 4 areas. Anthropometry, a field he enriched with new topological descriptions of ear, nose and iris. Incremental, a detailed physical description method which formed the basis of portrait parle. Photographic description, which he continually enhanced by defining a general protocol for face and inventory and precise mapping of all specific marks to be found on the body, such as scars, tattoos, moles and the like. The Berdillon card included spaces for description of the prisoner's physical characteristics, attitude, clothing, voice and language. The Berdillon card included 2 photographs, one face-on and one in profile, or what we all know, the mugshot. Anthropometry is the scientific study of the measurements and proportions of the human body. It is a series of systematized measuring techniques that express quantitatively the dimensions of the human body and skeleton. The ultimate aim of using anthropometry in forensic science is to help the law enforcement agencies in achieving personal identity in case of unknown human remains. Alphonse Berdillon. developed and made famous the system of birth lineage. It is based on the idea that there are several fundamental bone structures in the human body that remain constant. Birtillinage was adopted in many of the European justice systems, but eventually found to be riddled with difficulties by the late 1800s. It was eventually superseded by the gathering and use of other information that was more dependable, largely based on fingerprints and genetics. To take these fingerprints, the FBI uses a standard panel of 13 microsatellites, which together yield a remarkably minuscule 1 in 575 trillion chance of a random match. In paternity testing, the DNA fingerprints of the child, the mother, and the father are compared. Paternity is determined by assessing whether it would be possible for the child to have inherited the combination of bents in their DNA fingerprint from the alleged father and mother. With DNA fingerprinting, investigators have been able to re-examine evidence from old cases, leading to the arrests of violent killers and rapists who would have otherwise gone free. That is all about what you need to know about the methods of identification. Thank you for watching. Again, this is Kent Angelo Tindugan, and may the force be with you.